I am Brad Keelor. He is Scott Brandenberg. Next on Director's Cut, find out how he celebrated the '84 Olympics in LA and what he will not be doing in 2028 when they are back. Hello again, everybody, and welcome to Director's Cut. My name is Brad Keelor. I'm the director of the Geo-Institute, and that is why we call this show Director's Cut. Once a week, I sit down with a different GI member who tells us all kinds of stories about themselves. Sometimes they are personal, sometimes they are professional. The common thread is that all of them are fun. If you like what you see today, and I think you will, you want to click subscribe, you want to click get notifications. If you do those two things, you will be notified every single time we post something new to our channel, which you will want to know about. Every week is great on Director's Cut. This week is no different. We are joined by Professor Civil and Environmental Engineering faculty member from the University of California, Los Angeles. It is Scott Brandenberg. Scott, welcome.
Hey, Brad. Thanks. Happy to be here.
And we will talk a little bit later about his role in GeoCongress 2023 as well. For now, we start the same way we start with everyone else. Describe your job in 45 seconds.
Well, I think I have the greatest job in the whole world, not to offend other people who don't have my job, but being a professor comes with, it's a huge privilege to be a professor. I get paid to think through some of the most pressing issues that we don't really have a great handle on and we need to research more. I get paid to mold young minds and teach them about the fundamentals of geotechnical engineering in my case, or just engineering in general, how to think about new problems. And it is just really never a boring day for me. So I can't complain at all about my job.
That's exciting. I feel like a lot of people do this. They sound happy about it, but you're the first person, I think, who said you have the best job in the world on Director's Cut. So maybe that's going to have to be a trivia question someday.
Well, it's because I'm right and nobody else can.
Yeah, they can't. That's true. They can't say that because they don't have the best job. Well done. So we do a lot of fun questions on Director's Cut too, and we're going to dig into one of those now. A couple other young minds that you shape live in the house with you. What do you allow your kids to do that you were never allowed to do when you were a kid?
Yeah, it's a great question. My upbringing was so different from my kids that it's kind of amazing. I grew up on a farm, 10 miles from the nearest town, working hard on the cattle ranch. And, my kids are walking distance from the 3rd Street Promenade. So there's all sorts of things that that I did that they're not allowed to do. I used to go to Mexico for lunch in high school and have tacos and beer. They can't do that. But, they do all sorts of things that I was not allowed to do, like drop F-bombs at home. I figure as long as they use them in context properly, everyone has to learn how to swear the right way. They also get away with not really doing many chores. Growing up on a ranch, we had so much land and there was just a lot to take care of. Now we live in a little apartment and there's not a whole lot to do. So, it's just a different kind of lifestyle.
We had a little debate in our house about lawn mowing the other day, and I think that the chores is something that would have to be up at the top of that list. But I have to, what kind of cattle did you have? How many? Et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, well, my dad he's retired now, but he had about 15,000 head of cattle, and they were in feedlots, and they're all Holsteins, which do well in the heat in the Imperial Valley. So where I grew up is, a town called Calexico and El Centro down in the Imperial Valley, a lot of earthquakes down there, and it gets to be over 120 degrees in the summer. So it's you need a special breed of cattle to do well in that temperature, and the Holsteins are well adapted to the heat.
And 15,000, I mean, I grew up in Michigan. I don't know that there are any ranches that big in the Midwest. It's just very small, much more family farm size. That is incredible that you guys were able to do that. So what was your favorite beef product that you got off of the ranch then?
Well, I raised cattle in 4-H, and I had some that were pretty mean. So, I would walk it, put a harness on it, hold the rope, and lead it around the pen. And sometimes it would step on my feet and stuff like that and break toes. But some of them were pretty mean. So I'd say my favorite beef product was getting to eat those ones that were so mean to me. I was a little kid trying to walk it around.
That is excellent. So we've already mentioned earthquakes in here. That is, of course, one of your specialties. Before we started to record, we were talking about the second Ridgecrest quake in 2019, where I still had a broken leg and I was in bed watching the Dodgers game and saw all the shaking. You were there, and we used a video of you being there in our 2020 GeoCongress opening video. Tell us more about it.
Yeah, well, the reason I was there is that this was the sort of the main shock, but there was a precursor event that was smaller magnitude that came the day before on July 4th. So I was in San Diego visiting my parents for the 4th of July, and when that small earthquake happened, or it wasn't small, it was 6 something, we formed a team through geotechnical extreme events reconnaissance and went up to Ridgecrest the next day, and the magnitude 7.1 earthquake happened around 8 p.m. So we had done a full day in the field studying the surface fault rupture from the event the day before, and we were in the parking lot of I think Motel Super 8 or wherever we were staying. We had kind of made friends with the owners of the motel or the managers there, and we were getting ready to go out to dinner. So in the video you're talking about, you can actually see the whole gear team kind of getting some stuff out of the car, and we walk out of the frame. This is the hotel security camera. We walk off the frame of the hotel security camera kind of right when the P wave arrived, and you can see everything shaking, and the trees are really shaking around. And the thing that I remember most was kind of like we're trained to duck and cover, but we were all out in the middle of the open air in this big parking lot, and there wasn't really anything that could fall on us. So I kind of braced myself against the car next to me and rode out the waves, like a surfer or something like that. And during the shaking, we were talking about like, wow, what is the magnitude of this event? And, very scientific focus. So we all kind of enjoyed being through it. But, it got my heart rate going for sure. And, there's this big frame structure the cars drive underneath to enter the hotel parking lot. And that thing was really cranking back and forth. I was worried it was going to break, but, it was fine. And then we couldn't go out to dinner because all of Ridgecrest was closed down. So fortunately, we had a cooler with sandwich stuff in it, and we sat down in the parking lot and had a little meal and strategized, what are we going to do about this now? Because we've got this new event to study. So we ended up spending a few extra days in the field, had to go buy some clothes at Walmart and stuff like that because we were planning on a pretty short trip.
So one of the logical follow-up questions here is, where does that rank among all your earthquake experiences in your life?
Yeah, that's the strongest shaking that I've felt. There were quite a few earthquakes in the Imperial Valley when I was a kid, but none of them were, that big of a magnitude that close to me. So that's the number one event. My daughter, who's now 16, has actually felt stronger shaking than me, though. Well, it may be stronger, it's debatable, but she was right near the magnitude 7.2 El Mayor Cucapa earthquake that hit Mexicali Valley on April 4th, 2010. That was Easter, and she was visiting my parents down in the Imperial Valley. And so I think that she always reminds me that she's felt stronger shaking. That was a 7.2 and Ridgecrest was a 7.1.
It's great to have a teenager that can one up you, because they're not giving you enough of their opinions and stuff anyway, but you give them something like that, you're always going to hear about it. So one of the other things that you do for GI is you're an editor for the Journal of Geotechnical and Geoenvironmental Engineering, JGGE for short. What is the most rewarding thing to you about being a JGGE editor?
Yeah, it's a good question. I'm actually I'm an associate editor now. I was an editor for 5 years or so, something like that. So, as being an editor is a pretty hard job. It's a lot of logistics to keep on top of. As editor, I had to write a lot of letters to authors notifying them that their paper had been declined. So that part's not a lot of fun. We have really high standards in JGE.
Yeah.
And decline a lot of papers. And so those are some of the downsides. As an associate editor, I'm anonymous to the authors, so I don't write them those letters now. I just manage reviewers. But, one of the real upsides is, sort of getting to read all these interesting ideas before they're actually published. So it's like a sneak peek. So I feel well connected with what's going on out there, what people are working on. Of course, you can go to conferences like GeoCongress and learn about that too, because that usually that comes out before the papers come out. Another aspect of it that I think is really rewarding is editors have an opportunity to really provide constructive feedback to authors and help make their papers better. That's really what the peer review process should be all about, is helping people do better. And all of us have been authors. We've gotten review comments back and been like, those reviewers didn't understand what I was doing. What a bunch of idiots. How could they have said those things about my paper? I've had that reaction before anyway. I shouldn't speak for other people. But, I give it a week and I realize, wow, they really had some good points and that can help me. They're right about that. I need to make my paper better. And so being in a position to give that kind of feedback and synthesize the comments of reviewers in a way that helps authors, I think is a really important aspect of being an editor. And it's a pretty rewarding part of the job.
I'm positive no one else ever thinks that about their reviewers.
I didn't want to speak for other people, but I think I'm pretty safe in doing that now because I've heard of other people say the same thing.
We have to ask a couple of Southern California questions in here, and they won't be about ranches or cows, I promise. Although now I'm curious about what cows do during earthquakes, but we can talk about that some other time. Do you have, I think of all the cities in America, I think New York and Los Angeles are probably the two that there are the most songs written about. Do you have a favorite song about LA?
I do. It's one that most people don't associate with LA, and it's one that comes before my time, but I love the music of the late 60s. So my favorite song about LA is For What It's Worth by Buffalo Springfield, written by Stephen Stills. A lot of people think it's a sort of a Vietnam protest song or a song about the Vietnam War. But in fact, it's about a curfew that was imposed in Hollywood along Sunset Boulevard back in 1966. The merchants there didn't like all these young people coming in and kind of ruining the atmosphere. They wanted all the high-end people to come in and be on Sunset Boulevard, not these, poor young kids. And so they implemented a curfew, and that was not a popular decision. And hundreds, maybe thousands of people showed up to protest it. And they had I guess they had a sort of a fake funeral for one of the clubs on Sunset Boulevard that was closing there in Hollywood as a result of the curfew. And so it was that event that prompted Stephen Stills to write For What It's Worth. And he wrote it within a few weeks, and Buffalo Springfield recorded it pretty soon after that. And so that really is, it's a song about LA, and it's about that great culture of music and, youth back in the late 60s here.
That is an amazing response. Now, the flip side of that, is there a song about LA that you can't stand and you have to just turn away every time it comes on?
I'm honestly not a fan of I Love LA. There's I Love LA. I guess a lot of people like it, so I shouldn't say that. It was so
good in that Perfect Strangers episode where Larry and Balky went on vacation to California.
Oh, I don't remember that one.
It's definitely in there. There's a scene where they're driving a convertible and they get stuck under a semi. It's incredible.
Yeah, I guess it's just overplayed for me, so I've heard it a few too many times by now.
Definitely a good choice. And I hope a few people go discover Perfect Strangers out of this conversation. Lost classic.
Yeah.
So the other question we ask everybody who comes on Director's Cut is, how did you first get involved in ASCE and GI?
Yeah, I've been an ASCE student member since I was an undergraduate at Cal Poly San Luis Obispo back in the 90s. So was that 25 or more years by now. Pretty active in the various projects that are done through the ASCE student chapter. I did the concrete canoe. Actually, my wife, my girlfriend then, was also on the concrete canoe team. So we worked together on that project. She was a civil engineering major also. And then, for GI, I guess as a graduate student, that's when I really started going to GeoCongress and getting involved with Geo-Institute activities. And then, when I got to UCLA, I joined what was at the time the ASCE Metro Branch LA chapter or something like that. And
just rolls off the tongue.
Yeah, I don't even remember what it was called, and I was the chair of that group, but I'm pretty sure that's what it was called. And we went through all of the process of converting it to a Geo-Institute chapter. So it's now the LA Geo-Institute chapter, which is much easier to say.
Yes.
So good move to get that one done. And I've gone through I think I've attended almost all of the GeoCongresses. I may have missed a few that just didn't align with the schedule, but I think it's a really important conference to go to, and I try and make it every year.
And no conflict of interest there, since you're involved with the 23 one. Well,
I'll probably go to that one since it's right here in LA.
I hope you're there. That would be nice. So now a question about UCLA. I've been to the UCLA campus probably 5 times. I really enjoy it. I've been accused of liking every campus, but I do, but I really enjoy UCLA. What's your favorite spot on the UCLA campus, and when do you go there?
Yeah, there are a lot of great spots. This quarter I'm teaching in Haynes Hall, which is, UCLA is kind of divided between North Campus and South Campus. North Campus is like arts and humanities, and the college is letters and science, and then South Campus is the School of Medicine and Engineering and that sort of thing. And North Campus is really beautiful, right? South Campus is just kind of like buildings. So it's great when I teach North Campus and get to walk up there, and it really, it just reminds me that this is such a great privilege to be able to have this job and teach here. So I'm teaching in Haynes Hall, which is right next to Royce Hall, which is kind of like the signature building on the UCLA campus. There's this big open grassy quad with a big flagpole at the end, the United States flag there. And, just getting to walk along that corridor into this beautiful part of campus is pretty amazing. We also have a sculpture garden way up in the very far north end of campus. And I didn't even know it existed until about 6 years in, after I was an assistant professor. And that's a pretty amazing spot. You can go up there and just sit in the grass, and there's all these, some of the sculptures are really pretty weird, which I love, right? It's like not just like, here's a sculpture of a thing. The art is trying to make a statement. So trying to interpret what the artist was saying is always fun. And then I love our intramural soccer field too. We get together sometimes and go play little pickup games. We haven't done that since COVID, but we're hoping to resume that here pretty soon. Go and a group of professors and students and I will get together and play little pickup games of soccer, which is a lot of fun.
So for any visitors to the campus, it sounds like that sculpture garden should be on their list of places to go when they're out there. I know it's going to be on mine the next time I make it out that way. That's a good
go
tip.
See the sculpture garden. Go see Royce Hall. You got to see that too. It's a pretty amazing building.
So you said being a professor at UCLA is your favorite job. One thing that I always like about professors is you guys can say anything you want without any repercussions. You're not like government officials. There's no CEO kind of hanging over your head. So I wanted to ask you this question. What do you think are 3 things that local governments, specifically local governments, can do to better prepare for earthquakes?
Yeah, it's a good question. First, the thing about no repercussions is kind of a funny one, because my my brother actually came to a GeoCongress down in San Diego one time, and he went out with me, and I introduced him to a bunch of colleagues, and he said, I've never been around a group of people who was more worried about being wrong. So we could say we're always like putting caveats in front of everything, like I haven't totally studied this issue. So it seems like we can get away with anything, but most of us are really motivated by the desire to say the right thing. And so that's part of the job for sure. But yeah, in terms of like three things that local governments could do to help with earthquakes, right? That's the question.
Yeah.
One of the things we're doing in LA that I think is great, a little controversial, but great, is the soft story and non-ductile concrete ordinances. These are not geotechnical issues, these are structural issues, but we have a lot of buildings that were built before modern building codes, and they're not up to code. And building owners don't want to spend money to fix them because what do you get out of that investment? An earthquake is kind of a hypothetical thing, right? You want to spend money on stuff that's going to provide benefit right now. It's hard to convince people to pay money so that they don't lose a bunch of money at a later date, right? Even though it's the right decision in most cases. So that's a really important role of government, because if you just do the math and the economics of it, it's hard to justify it, even though I think the studies do show that it pays off in the long term, just not like this year, right? And so we've implemented that ordinance, and a lot of buildings have been fixed as a result. So that's a really important government role. One of the things that I learned from doing reconnaissance after earthquakes is that a lot of the time it's the big infrastructure that is really important for keeping local communities going. A lot of the time the local community itself is very resilient in terms of the management of its own business. But if they don't have water and power, that's a huge limit, right? So understanding interconnectedness of all of these infrastructure systems is incredibly important. If one system goes down, how does that impact another system? In terms of seismic hazard, we're really good at doing things point by point. We're not so great, honestly, at thinking about spatially distributed infrastructure systems yet. I think that there's work to do there to make it better. And then I think another thing that we can do is on the communication side. Engineers have a tendency to just explain all the bad things that could happen if there's an earthquake, and they think that fear is going to be a motivator for people to go out and act. I think that the social science evidence is that is not a motivator. People get sort of paralyzed by this fear, and they think this terrible thing's going to happen. I can't do anything about it, so I'm just going to live with the risk. So figuring out a way to communicate with people that really incentivizes behaviors that would make them more resilient households is, I think, an important aspect of local government too.
And I think after that answer, we have no choice but to give a shout out for the Lifelines conference that's going to be at UCLA in about 3 months?
A few months. Yeah, that'll be a great one.
And we'll put the URL for that down in the show notes. It is an ASCE conference. We're partnered with UCLA on that one. We would love to see everybody attend that and talk about a lot of the issues that Scott just talked about in that response right there. The Olympics are coming back to LA in 2028. Most of us, well, a lot of us, I guess it's getting less and less as more people are born, remember 1984. The Olympics were in LA. Probably not so many of us remember 32, the first time they were in LA. Disturbing fact is it's almost as far between 1984 and 2028 as it was between 32 and 84. I'm feeling very old right now.
That's weird. You are correct, though.
Do you remember the 84 Olympics at all? What was your experience as a Southern California kid with the Olympics coming to LA?
Yeah, I remember it pretty well. I was 7, almost 8, I guess. And, I was super excited about the Olympics. I would wake up at like 4:30 in the morning to watch water polo. And my parents were like, you've never watched water polo before? And I was like, I don't know, it's fun. But yeah, on the opening day of the opening ceremonies, I was outside playing with friends, and it was raining. We would get these sort of monsoons that come through the Imperial Valley in the summertime. And was running and the concrete's kind of slippery, and I tripped over a dog, like this big black lab that was running around with us, and landed chin first on the concrete and just split my chin all the way open. So my parents are inside watching the opening ceremonies of the '84 Olympics, and I come running in just bleeding all over the carpet and everything, and my dad's like went to grab paper towels and hold them on my chin. So we spent the opening ceremonies day in the ER getting, I think, 14 stitches or something in my chin. I still have a scar to remember it by.
I guess with 14 you would. I'm always curious about the paper towel response because I've been there too. Was the thinking that maybe you didn't have to go to the ER, or did you guys just pack up and go immediately?
Well, my mom said it looked like I had another mouth, so she knew that it was going to be an ER visit for sure. She could see like chunks of fat and stuff hanging out, so it was pretty bad. But the paper towels, I think, were probably to spare the carpet.
I think moms are always a little more reasonable about that stuff anyway. I cut off the front of my thumb when I was 17, and I didn't want to go have it stitched up. And then after bleeding through like a whole roll of paper towel, I decided it was probably a good idea to get that taken care of.
Yeah,
that is so memorable. Hopefully this doesn't happen to you on the first day of the 28 Olympics.
I hope not. In '84, I also remember really well Mary Lou Retton winning the gold medal in gymnastics, and then the new technology of the day was super slow-mo. That was, the gymnastics moves. You can see the people flipping through the air in slow motion.
Which I love that now we can just do on our own devices whenever we want. That's kind of incredible when you think about it.
Yep.
So the final question here, we mentioned GeoCongress 23 a couple of times, and for those of you watching this, you may or you may not know Scott is our intrepid technical chair for the GeoCongress 2023 conference. We are pretty early in the planning, but you can go to the website and check out 2023.geocongress.org, find out more about the conference. Right now, Scott, I have to know from you, what has you excited about that conference?
Yeah, I'm really excited to welcome everybody to LA for this conference. There's a lot going on down here. We have a lot of huge projects going on, a lot of hazards, right? We have earthquakes, we have wildfires, we've got drought, we've got a supply chain problem with ships lined up outside the ports of LA and Long Beach. So you name it, we got it. It's a fun place to come visit. So a lot of the projects we're working on getting ready for the Olympics, we've got all these transportation infrastructure projects, tunneling and deep excavations. We're replacing big trunk lines that cross fault lines in Southern California to maintain some resilience in our water system. The ports themselves are really interesting geotechnically, right? There's a lot of fill out there, a lot of important infrastructure there to design, a lot of accomplishments that have been made there to make these ports work for the country. I forget the percent of goods that come through the ports, but it's 40 something, if I'm right. It's
pretty high. We can leave it at that.
Yeah, these two port facilities are massively important for the entire United States economy, so it's really important. We've also got, now 3 Geo-Institute chapters down here. So I mentioned the LA chapter. There's also an Orange County chapter and an Inland Empire chapter. So a lot of really active local practitioners here. I've always appreciated the local community a lot, provided a lot of support through the years. And of course, a lot of universities down here too, whose, our students go and participate in the GeoWall competition every year. And so I think it'll be a great conference. And I'd also welcome all of you from cold weather to come and dip your toes in the ocean, because it's going to be warm and sunny. I can't guarantee that. It's actually raining here today, but usually it's 70 degrees and sunny. So if you're coming from a cold weather climate, you'll have a good time at the beach too.
One thing that we are excited about is it will also be the 60th anniversary of the first Terzaghi lecture. Not the 60th lecture, because there was a year that was missed somewhere along the way, but it will be the 60th anniversary of the Terzaghi lecture, so we will be doing something special for that. So you made it through all these questions. I do have to go back and ask for your bonus question. We need to know, what do cows do during earthquakes?
Most of them are probably just laying down. That's what they do all day. So, you'd see stories of like cow tipping. That's like a legend that people go and tip cows over. I don't know how that would be possible. I'm still skeptical that ever happens. I'm sure they just are laying down. They're pretty long period structures, right? Like really skinny legs and a lot of mass up on top. So they probably don't get shaken real hard by the earthquake.
That's a good answer. I was expecting either that or something to be like that they had some sense, like after the tsunami in 2004, that all the animals on Sri Lanka headed for higher ground before the humans did.
People always say that, like my animal was acting really weird right before the earthquake. And I think the thing people forget is that their animals act really weird all the time.
All the time.
And so there's no correlation.
That is great. So thank you for that answer to the bonus question. Scott, you made it through with flying colors. We found out a lot about you, and that was a really good episode, I think. For everybody watching out there, again, if you liked what you saw, click subscribe, click get notifications. We'll let you know every time we post something. It's quite frequently. We will keep you in the know. Go listen to Scott's favorite and least favorite songs about LA. We'll put links to them down in the show notes so that you can enjoy those at full blast in your convertible as you pretend you are cruising down a freeway in Southern California. So Scott, thanks again for doing this.
Yeah, thank you, Brad.
And we're going to have a lot of fun over the next couple of years as we plan for GeoCongress. And thanks again to all you viewers, and we will see you next week.